What's up, everybody? It is December 1st, and it is one of my favorite days of the year because it's a week after Black Friday. Because on Black Friday, you're still kind of drunk on turkey and you start buying stuff online because your Christmas bonus came early, whatever. But a week later, everything starts showing up on your doorstep, and it's just like the best day. So I'm just like super stoked and excited. So I'm just going to show some of my stuff off because I'm gonna. So, first major present I got was from the U.S. government, from the ATF. My tax stamp came back for my PTR 32. So, my pistol is now a rifle. So, my AKHK, whatever you want to call it. I can actually shoulder it now, and so I bought this stock, put it on there from HK Parts. I needed a dot, so I picked up a Aimpoint clone from Primary Arms. This is their 2 MOA 50,000 hour dot. It was like $70 because the mount is not compatible with other Aimpoint mounts. But since this is just a range toy, I'm not too worried about. I'm not really worried about that. So yeah, I would never wear one of these on like a duty gun, but for something like this, perfect. I picked up some arc rail adapters so I could put my Ear Pro directly on my helmet. This is an OpsCore helmet. And a buddy of mine was selling his PVS 14, so I bought it. I got this bridge mount from Mod Armory, and I added my other PVS 14. So now I can run dual night vision. So now I have depth perception, which is pretty fun. And I'm going to kill me the crap out of some coyotes now, and pigs. Safariland was doing a thing, so I picked up a duty holster from them. I wanted a retention holster to run in like rifle classes, especially when you're diving in the mud and stuff. So I wanted something with a hood that would protect my RMR. So this has the SLS hood and also the ALS bail. So really happy about that. I went to Big Tex Outdoors, one of my favorite retailers for gun stuff. Picked up a second Streamlight 1000 lumen flashlight. It's good to have a backup. Picked up some 3rd gen Glock parts because I've got a Glock project that I've been kind of working on. Got to stipple it and do some more stuff with that. They had a Type 2 RMO7, which is the 6.5 MOA adjustable version. Normally I get the Type 1s for like $350 whenever Cabela's has their little sale. But knowing that, it was like $429 for a Type 2. One thing to keep in mind is that these Type 1s were never designed to be mounted on the slide of a handgun. They were designed to be really small dots for rifles. So they weren't designed for the reciprocation, which is why Type 1s have been known to have like issues where they flicker or they just die after 8,000, 10,000, 5,000 rounds, somewhere around there. They'll just die. And you send it to Trijicon, they send you a new one or they repair it. But the Type 2 was designed with slides more in mind, so it's a lot more robust. So for the money, I was like, I'm not going to pass that up. Team Wendy had a sale on their helmets, so I picked up a Team Wendy helmet, and then I picked up some Peltor Tactical Sports and an arc rail adapter, which is, I think, still in the mail. And I picked up the little gel cups for these, and I already took these off the headband so I could be ready for the helmet when it comes tomorrow. But man, these are way better than those Howard lights. For $40, the Howard lights are great, but these are so much more clear. They don't clip. They're worth it. $80, $80, $90. I think I got these on Amazon. $30 for the gel cups, and it's night and day. I didn't feel like spending $250 on sword-ins or $300 on Comtacs, so I was going to get another pair for Christmas. I asked for my wife already for those. So, but yeah, Tactical Sports these are awesome. The other thing I got was this, an M&P 2.0 compact and an Apex flat trigger because those just came out. So originally I was shooting IDPA, and the IDPA guys, but they were going to do a Carry Optics division and they decided not to. So I can still do it, but I have to do it outlaw. The USPSA group at my local range, they stopped doing USPSA. So I was like, well, if I'm gonna shoot, I might as well have an iron-sighted gun. I already have an iron-sighted Glock, but I've changed it enough that it won't meet any rules, production rules. So I figured I can just run the M&P, but I've already changed the trigger, so it's no longer production legal. So it's an ESP gun now. But yeah, picked up a holster from TR Holsters outside the waistband. Also had them make me an inside the waistband holster. As you can see, I'm a big fan of Kryptek Raid because I just like it. I mean, why not, right? Yeah, it's inside the waistband. Why even bother? But I'm a sucker for this kind of thing. But this will let me carry with a TLR. I didn't need mag carriers. My P10 mag carriers, all my P10 mag carriers, fit the M&P magazine perfectly. Didn't have to adjust the screws or anything. They just work. So looking at it more closely, I realized that the width is identical, the length is identical, and the profile of the, I guess that little taper right there, is identical. The only thing that's different is the taper up top, the way it narrows. So basically, if you look at the shape, an M&P mag will be a little bit fatter at the bottom. So a P10C mag will definitely work in an M&P carrier. Vice versa, maybe not. This was specifically molded for the P10C, but again, the M&P fits in there just fine. So if you're a P10C guy and you can't find mag carriers that you like, see if they have M&P carriers. They'll probably work. Really not much. I'm not going to do like a whole series on the M&P like I did with the P10C. There's enough information about the M&P. I mean, the M&P itself is a pretty well-known platform. The changes that have been made with the 2.0 are all pretty well-known. The trigger is pretty new as far as the flat trigger. And if you wear size L or larger gloves, I pretty much feel like this is a must, unless you're the kind of person that really pulls the trigger like that. With the factory trigger sits like back here. So the trigger reach is really short. So if you've got decent sized hands, it feels like you're picking the gun's nose. I mean, your hand's all the way in there, or you've got to really exaggerate pulling your finger out to keep it on the pad. Unless you're the type of person that likes to shoot with this part of your finger, which a lot of people aren't. But if you are, then it's fine. The other problem I have with the trigger that I've always had was I don't really care that it articulates. That doesn't bother me. My problem is because the trigger sits kind of back like that, when you pull it, and this is exaggerated, but when you pull it, it rotates up and away from you, and you can feel it going like that as you pull. And on top of that, because it's moving away from you, you kind of have to push your finger up, and so it feels like you're going like this. You get this weird arc motion in your trigger finger, and it just wreaks havoc with my front sights. Obviously I'm exaggerating it, but that's just how it feels, and it drives me nuts. So I waited until this had been released from Apex because I knew it was coming, and just happened to work out that on Black Friday they were doing a special on the Smith & Wesson, so I picked this up for like $440 out the door, which was pretty sweet, especially for a relatively new gun. But the kit replaces the springs, the sear, the little activation piece that attaches to the sear, and when I used the factory springs, I had like a 3-pound trigger. It was crazy. So I messed around with the springs until I got it to about 4.5, 5 pounds, and honestly, it's a really nice trigger. I'd almost say it's as good or better than the P10C, and this one's got 5,000 rounds through it with the HBI trigger shoe. Take up is just as smooth; it's the same. But when you look at the trigger, you can see I can get it to move right there before it breaks. Whereas with the M&P, you get that take up, and then no matter how slowly I pull it, it just breaks. And you can see how crisp that is. The best way I could describe it is it feels like a hinged 1911. And everyone says, oh, it's 1911. Like, well, no, this really does feel like a 1911. Now, it doesn't feel like a Nighthawk. It feels like a cheap 1911, like the cheapest 1911 that you could buy in the store with a hinged trigger, which they don't have. But as far as the break, that's what it feels like. The reset feels real similar. It's not as positive as the P10C or the Glock, because the Glock and P10C, the striker actually pushes the trigger forward, so it really shoves your finger forward. Whereas with the M&P, it's more like every other gun where you kind of have to move your finger forward and kind of help it along. But you know, whatever. I mean, I'm not really big on reset, because reset isn't when the gun actually fires. And when you're shooting fast, you're not riding out to the exact reset point anyway. At least I'm not. I'm typically going to just move my finger forward as quickly as I can to wherever I think the reset point is, and then just go to and then fire. So, I mean, depending on your technique, maybe reset matters more to you, but to me, it really doesn't, as long as it's short. One thing I did notice about the gun when I first picked it up was the grip texture. I do love how aggressive it is. People have talked about it. Some people think it's too aggressive. Personally, I would rather have more aggressive, because you can always sand it down, and it is going to wear over time, especially if you're, you know, shooting outside and your hands are getting dirty and you're grinding dirt and sand into it and mud and whatever. It's going to smooth out, so I like having it more aggressive. They actually extended it up higher. The original one came out to about here, and now it comes up a little bit, so I can feel a little bit more of that texture on the palm of my hand. Unfortunately, they didn't extend it to the top, and I don't know why manufacturers don't do that, because a lot of people shoot with their thumb in that position, so the grip would be nice. And also, you know, when your hands are up high in the two-handed, you've got your palm right there, and so there's nothing to grip onto. So, and that's where the gun slips for a lot of people. So why not put some traction there? It just always bugs me that they don't put it there. The other thing I noticed was that the grip feels really short. It doesn't feel full size. So even though dimensionally it's very similar to the 19, from here to here it's a little bit taller, and so the grip is shorter to kind of make up for that. So when I look at like the P10C and, you know, I grip it, it's about flush with the front of my pinky. There's not a lot of skin kind of showing. And when I put a magazine in, there's no contact anywhere with my finger with the magazine. I don't feel it at all. With a Glock, you can see a little bit more kind of flesh, kind of muffin topping out there. And one of the things that happens is, and I've got a dummy round in there, when I go to release the magazine, if I don't shift my grip a little bit, because my skin is touching the bottom of the magazine, when I press the button, it doesn't come out. And so a lot of times you'll see people doing that in classes and competition, where they go like this and it doesn't come out, and they start shaking the gun trying to get the magazine out. And what's happening is it's actually contacting their hand. So I run a magwell on my guns. This is an agency magwell, so that when I do that, it doesn't touch. With the M&P, it's even more exaggerated. So about half my pinky is still hanging off the bottom of the gun, and I've got a lot of material, a lot of hand right there. So when you go to stick the magazine in, you got to be careful and treat it like a subcompact. If you've ever shot a Shield or an XDS or like a Colt Officer or anything with a really short grip, you know that if you don't get your pinky out of the way, a lot of times the toe of the magazine can actually pinch the skin, and you end up with a blood blister right there, or it can pinch back here and you end up with a blood blister back there. So you kind of have to shift your grip kind of like that, so that you can get a nice clear insertion. The other problem is if you have bigger hands and you don't clear your hand out of the way, when you do go to put it in, your palms can touch before the magazine's seated. And so your hands slam together and the magazine's still sticking out. So you have to kind of roll your hand in, or do kind of a more exaggerated palm only. Again, this is all going to come with practice, but it's just something to keep an eye on, or just something to be aware of. The other thing is, I noticed that at least on the, I didn't notice this with the old compact, but I noticed it on this, that my hand will actually rotate the little tool that holds the back strap on. It's not a big deal. It doesn't rotate it enough to like impede the magazine. Even if I rotated it to some really extreme angle, the magazine still just kind of clears it. But so I just noticed it, so I'm bringing it up. The slide release on this side is terrible. I know that Smith & Wesson refers to this as a slide stop, and they say you're supposed to rack the slide. It's not for releasing, but if that was the case, then why is texturing on top? I mean, personally, I can do a really fast reload that way using opposing forces, but going the other way is just impossible without two thumbs. So it's not really lefty friendly. I mean, obviously you can reverse the mag catch, but unless you're running just the top of the slide every time, if you're going to try to use this as a release, I don't see it. I don't see it ever really getting lighter either, because you can actually. So not only is it, when you look at it, it's further forward, so it's got less leverage than this side, and the force has to transfer all the way around to where it's actually grabbing the slide. And there's actually flex here. So I'm holding it down on the back side, and you can see how it's moving. I can really actually flex it a little bit. So I'm just, I mean, I'm not left-handed, so I don't care. But if you are left-handed, you know, that could be an issue. These, I don't know what these are for. Front serrations, really? You can't rack the slide with them because your hand comes off when it hits this wider part of the frame. You could do a press check, but you know, if there's enough light to see brass this way, you can just, here, I'll just put a dummy round in there. You can see it that way. I mean, that doesn't really help. You can see it from the sides, like that. And the other problem is, so you can't tell by feeling it whether the ejector is out or not. So the ejector, you can see it is sticking out. Now with no round, it still sticks out. So you can't use that as like a tactile tool to tell you if there's a loaded ground. In low light, the only thing you can do is pull the slide back and stick your finger in there and feel for brass. With a Glock, when there's no round, it's flush, and you can feel that. And then when there is a round, you can see it sticking out there, and you can feel that edge. So the P10C does the same thing. So I'm not really sure why they even bothered with those. Maybe just a light in the slide up or something. Oh, lights. So, all right, so here's an X300U A model. So this has the tab. This is the universal key. So this is the key you'd use on like a Glock, not the Picatinny key, but no problem, fits just fine, easy to activate. As far as momentary, as far as constant on, trying to use your trigger finger one-handed is really hard to do, especially on the Surefires. These are just really stiff. But you just come in with your left hand and go like that, no problem. With the TLR, take this off here. So this one's got the Picatinny rail key, and with the Picatinny key, it sits furthest back, with the exception of a different key, which I'll show you in a second. So you can see there's a little bit of a gap there to the trigger guard, and for me at least, without shifting my grip, I'm barely tickling the activation lever. So if I kind of shift my grip forward a little bit and break my grip, I can hit it and activate it one-handed that way. What I don't like about doing that with this particular model is because it has to curve, let me turn that off, because it has to come down and inward, I tend to notice that my finger can slip off when I'm trying to activate it, like that. And I don't know, it's too close to the trigger for comfort. So with the Streamlight, and I'm starting to move to this technique for the X300 as well, because I'm starting to shoot more constant on than momentary when it's time to shoot, is to simply roll the gun inboard and go like that with my knuckle here. And the nice thing about the M&P is because it has a rounded trigger guard, you've got this gap here. So it's really easy to index that point and roll in. You can find it real quick. Whereas like on the Glock, because it's got this point here, your hand tends to kind of slip off. Your hand just goes past it, so you have to really kind of hit it just right to where you can do that. So if you're coming out of the holster and you're drawing and you want to roll in, it's a little bit harder to do. So the newer Streamlights come with a rail key for a P320. And when I tried that at first, it sat a little bit too far back. It was kind of sitting like this. So I stuck this in a mill and I just kind of shaved off that front edge there. You could do it with a file or something. But by modifying that one, can see that it's completely as far to the rear as it can go. It's barely touching that metal tab, and I can actually get my finger down there now without shifting my grip from my firing grip. Again, still I prefer to just kind of come in and do that. But, you know, your mileage may vary. Anyway, just something to keep in mind. So yeah, that was my Black Friday. This is pretty much my Christmas. So if you got any questions, let me know. If you want to see more stuff on the 2.0, maybe if you got any specific questions about it that maybe I missed, there's enough people talking about it and there's enough information about it that it's not really necessary. But as far as like the P10C goes, the only thing I'm seeing is maybe this trigger kit that Cajun Gunworks is coming out with. So when that gets released, I'll probably pick one of those up and give it a try, just because I like trying new stuff. Other than that, yeah, really not much more. Maybe if when I get more night vision stuff, maybe I'll do some stuff on that. But anyway, till I see you guys again, have a good holiday. Later.
Just really going right over top of the